ontario.org. Please welcome Ted Wigdor.
Thank you, Stefan, and I'm glad to see so many people here as well as live on the web. For me, this is like deja vu all over again, to quote a famous Yogi Berra comment. I worked at Revenue Canada 20 years ago on the GST implementation task force and helping businesses, both large and small, cope with the new tax system. And here I am now, 20 years later, dealing with small and medium-sized enterprises in terms of having them adjust from the old RST to the new single sales tax when it comes into effect next year. I don't want to repeat all the key points that have been raised up to now. We have quite a few esteemed colleagues here. I just want to pick up on a couple of points, just in terms of the issue of competitiveness. When I was working at Revenue Canada, I remember there was something that came in the media from the U.S. talking about how the GST, remember when the manufacturer sales tax was removed, and that had embedded costs associated with it, and our exports were taxed, so it hurt our competitiveness. When we switched to GST, the U.S. was complaining how this would be an unfair competitive advantage for us. And this was in the era when the free trade agreement was just starting. So they were concerned how our conversion from the old manufacturer sales tax to GST was going to be beneficial to the Canadian economy, make us more competitive, and they were concerned. So bring this forward to today, looking at Ontario businesses in terms of our competitiveness, I think it's quite clear, based on the 20 years of history, that this really will make Ontario businesses, large and small, more competitive, as certainly as our goods get exported either to foreign jurisdictions, but even to jurisdictions in Canada that have the existing retail sales tax as opposed to a value-added tax. They won't be able to claim the tax that they are embedded in their costs the way Ontario businesses will going forward. So I think this really will be an improvement for Ontario's competitiveness. Certainly simplicity, tax compliance will help tremendously. The other thing I want to bring forward is that I believe it was the minister who made reference to the C.D. Howe paper that came out a couple of years ago on the experience that took place in the Atlantic provinces, except for PEI, in terms of the benefits that they accrued in the 10 years that their harmonization had come into effect. And based on that, the C.D. Howe came out with another report in 2008 talking about the benefits to Ontario if it were to harmonize. And then the Ontario Chamber of Commerce came out with its own report earlier this year. So I think all that research, it's all independent. They probably use different methodologies. But based on all those studies, I think the message is quite clear that we will benefit in the long run. And I would love to help small and medium-sized enterprises get comfortable with the new system, because ultimately they will benefit tremendously.
Well, thank you very much, Ted. And we're going to start with the questions, but I think there's probably going to be some comments on this, and because we have some questions flowing, and maybe Stephen, the minister. And Rick makes a good point. We had a few comments out there. You know, it's going to hurt the consumer. Is it going to hurt the consumer? What's the benefit? Is it going to be offset by what the benefits to the SME market? Now, there was another good question, is that, you know, there's going to be a contraction in Ontario. Most of our jobs are based on export and manufacturing are good jobs. So maybe this is a benefit. Would you like to comment where Rick takes the points? You know, it's going to negatively impact the consumer, which will then, unfortunately, negatively impact the SME. Steve, do you want to start? And then
yeah, thank you, Stefan. Just a couple of points. If you look at the studies that Ted reported on, moving to a single sales tax or harmonizing with the GST has significant benefits to the economy. This new investment, increased competitiveness, higher standard of living, greater productivity, that translates right across the board into more jobs, better jobs, higher value-added jobs. The example Terry mentioned about investing in high-tech equipment, we're taxing that under our sales tax now. That is not good for business, it's not good for the economy. With respects to people, besides a more robust economy, which is beneficial for everyone, there's three elements of the personal income tax package, and I'll just spend a second on that. The $1,000 for families is only one of three measures. The other measure is doubling our property and sales tax credits, which is tied to level of sales and rent that people have. So they'll benefit from more than doubling of that benefit. In addition, the third element of our personal tax relief is lowering the lowest bracket in our income tax system to have the lowest taxable rate in Canada for income up to $36,000. But all income levels benefit from that move. That move alone will provide 93% of income tax filers with a tax cut. So I think that's really important. That's broad-based personal tax relief that will complement these changes. Same with the corporate income tax cuts. That is, again, part of a broader package that will help businesses throughout the provinces and many communities throughout Ontario. They're struggling now in trying to attract jobs, whether it's a manufacturing or resource sector. These tax cuts will benefit them, which in turn will help those local communities. And they, in turn, better jobs, better economic growth will help the people who work for those companies. And I think that's part of the broad economic package. And just with respect to timing, this was such an important issue for the federal government to do it now, that $4.3 billion was a significant signal to Ontario that now's the time to make the change. And we can't just assume that this downturn that we're in is just rebound exactly the way we were before. We've known the economy's changing, the global economy's changing. Now's the time to get positioned for new economic growth. So when the global economy recovers, Ontario will be a better place to invest. So it's critical that we get positioned now for increased competitiveness.